A whole bunch of stuff to get into, but ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start off something different on this Monday morning. Normally, 99% of the time, I'm starting off with some football because football took place on Sunday afternoon in a bevy of places throughout the country for the National Football League. Normally, that's what I'm doing. We ain't starting that off today. And by the way, a little bit later on in the show, I got a special guest coming on the show. I'll tell you who that is at the top of hour number 2 right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, Sirius XM, Mad Dog Sports Radio, Channel 82. But I got to tell you something right now. I had the fight 5-4 in favor of Terence Crawford after 9 rounds. It could have gone either way. And then he basically put on a boxing clinic over the last 3 rounds of the fight. 10, 11, and 12. He used his jab. He kept his distance. He exchanged when necessary, which is something that I was scared to death of him doing, but he wasn't scared at all.
In boxing, legacy is not built by staying where you're comfortable. It's forged by daring to step into the fire, by going where people believe you don't belong. Terence Bud Crawford did exactly that when he walked into Saul Canelo Alvarez's domain at super middleweight. For years, Canelo ruled 168 pounds like a king, intimidating opponents with his presence, his power, and his reputation. But when Crawford, smaller, lighter, and supposedly overmatched, accepted the challenge, the boxing world braced for disaster. What happened instead was history. And as Stephen A. Smith and Crawford himself revealed in their conversation, it wasn't luck, it wasn't hype, it was proof. Proof that Crawford is definitely better than Canelo.
Terence Bud Crawford moving up to the 168-pound limit in an effort to claim the undisputed super middleweight championship of the world from the grasp of Saul Canelo.
Stephen A. Smith's framing of the fight started with the enormity of Crawford's step. Moving up to the 168-pound limit was not just a jump in weight. It was a jump into a new world. Canelo had lived here for years, making this division his personal kingdom, defeating every challenger that came his way. Crawford, by contrast, had never fought at super middleweight. When you step into an environment where your opponent is not only comfort but dominance, the odds are stacked against you. Smith understood this perfectly, that the act itself was bold beyond measure. It wasn't just about belts. It was about challenging the perception of boxing hierarchy. Crawford was leaving behind a secure throne at welterweight and daring to invade the empire of a man considered untouchable at 168. That kind of move isn't made by someone looking for an easy payday. It's made by someone looking to prove they're better, no matter the risk. And Crawford did exactly that.
There's a whole bunch of stuff to get into, but ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start off something different on this Monday morning. Normally, 99% of the time, I'm starting off with some football because football took place on Sunday afternoon in a bevy of places throughout the country for the National Football League. Normally,
Smith drew a comparison between the Canelo fight and the destruction of Errol Spence, a night when Crawford shocked the world with his dominance. Crawford's response was telling. He didn't feel shocked. To him, this wasn't an upset, it was fulfillment. He had told people what he would do, and he did it. The distinction matters.
that's what I'm doing. We ain't starting that off today. And by the way, a little bit later on in the show, I got a special guest coming on the show. I'll tell you who that is at the top of hour number 2 right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, Sirius XM, Mad Dog Sports Radio, Channel 82. But I got to tell you something right now.
When fans and analysts call something a shock, it implies the result was unlikely. But Crawford rejected that narrative outright. To him, there was no surprise in outclassing Spence, and no surprise in outclassing Canelo. This mindset reflects grace. True elite fighters don't see themselves as underdogs, even when the world does. Crawford's confidence shows why he belongs in conversations above Canelo. Canelo wins because of strength and familiarity with his division. Crawford wins because of vision, preparation, and skill that transcends divisions. His calm dismissal of shock underscores why this fight proved what he already knew. He was better.
He's really 3 in my mind because we only fought one fight at the junior middleweight division. So he's really moving up from 147 pounds, okay?
Smith pressed further, asking about Canelo's reaction to being beaten by someone moving up 2 weight classes. Crawford admitted he believed Canelo was indeed shocked, especially since Canelo's own camp had dismissed his chances. Canelo's team openly said Crawford couldn't hurt him, while Canelo's power would overwhelm.
Terence Bud Crawford moving up to the 168-pound limit in an effort to claim the undisputed super middleweight championship.
But that assumption crumbled. Crawford not only took Canelo's shots, he delivered his own, changing the narrative instantly. This moment highlights one of the most overlooked aspects of boxing: perception. Canelo entered the fight believing Crawford was simply too small, too fragile to survive in his world. That arrogance became a weakness. Crawford flipped it on him, showing that skill and discipline don't vanish with size. This was not just Crawford proving he could compete, it was him proving Canelo and his entire camp wrong on the most basic level. And that reversal is why Crawford's superiority can no longer be questioned.
This was the super fight. This was Terence Bud Crawford moving up 2 weight divisions, really 3 in my mind, because he only fought 1 fight at the junior middleweight division. So he's really moving up from 147.
Smith emphasized just how massive this step was. Really 3 divisions, given Crawford had only 1 fight at junior middleweight. From 147 to 168, that's not just a physical leap, it's a psychological one. Canelo had made 168 his comfort zone. Crawford had to adapt overnight. This context magnifies the win. Many fighters who move up carry their speed but lose their pop. Others bulk up but lose agility. Crawford didn't lose either. He carried his sharpness, his counterpunching, his poise, and even enough power to gain respect. Smith's framing here shows why this fight wasn't just any upset. It was one of the boldest moves in modern boxing history. To invade a weight class that's not yours and topple its king is rare. Roy Jones did it moving up to heavyweight. Pacquiao did it climbing through divisions. Now Crawford has etched his name alongside them. And in doing so, he showed that even outside his natural class, he was still the better man compared to Canelo.
Than a super fight in Vegas. I can tell you that right now. There's very, very few events. Props to Nick Khan and the WWE. Props to Dana White for the UFC.
Smith wanted to know when Canelo had that whoa moment, that instant where he realized the fight was slipping away. Crawford's response was pure composure. He didn't point to a single moment of weakness. He noted Canelo's poise, his professionalism, his ability to absorb shots without showing panic. But the deeper meaning of Crawford's answer is this: the fight wasn't defined by moments, it was defined by consistency.
Props to Turki Al-Sheikh from Saudi Arabia, who basically funded the fight. Props to William Morris Endeavor, my boys, Ari Emanuel.
There wasn't one punch that flipped the script. There was a steady accumulation of skill, ring, IQ, and discipline that wore Canelo down. That's what makes Crawford superior. Canelo relies on imposing his will. One body shot, one combination, one round to break. Crawford dismantled him not with bursts, but with methodical mastery. In boxing, the better fighter doesn't need a highlight moment. They need to control the narrative across 12 rounds. And that's exactly what Crawford did.
70,482 people showed up for this fight. But the biggest props of the night goes to Terence Crawford, who did not disappoint.
Stephen A. Smith highlighted the sheer scale of the event, over 70,000 fans, and how Crawford delivered under pressure. What stood out most was Smith's admission of fear. He was terrified Crawford might exchange too much with Canelo. Yet Crawford wasn't afraid at all. This distinction matters. Critics believe the smaller man should run, survive, steal rounds. Instead, Crawford stood in the fire, exchanged when needed, and still controlled the fight. That courage separates great fighters from legends.
Kept his distance. He exchanged when necessary, which is something that I was scared to death of him doing, but he wasn't scared at all.
In the biggest crowd of his career, against the most dangerous puncher he'd ever faced, Crawford didn't just survive, he thrived. Canelo had the stage, the division, and the crowd on his side, yet Crawford flipped it. By embracing exchanges, Crawford proved he wasn't just tactical, he was tougher, braver, and more complete. That's why this night defined him as superior to Canelo.
He was supposed to be the smaller man. He was supposed to be the weaker man. He was supposed to be the man that was going to spend the entire night on his bicycle, running for his damn life because Saul Canelo Alvarez was coming his way.
Smith addressed the core narrative. Crawford was supposed to be smaller, weaker, and forced to run for survival. Canelo had dominated 11 fights at 168, and Crawford had none. On paper, the matchup was absurd. Yet the outcome was the opposite. Crawford outclassed him. This is the turning point of the story.
Was a masterclass in boxing by Terence Crawford. Now, to me, the fight, some people were saying it was a severely lopsided and stuff like that. I'm not going for that. I'm not feeling that at all.
When everything about the tale is stacked against and you still dominate, the conclusion is undeniable. Crawford shattered myths about size, strength, and dominance. The supposed king of 168 was dethroned by a man who wasn't even supposed to belong. This wasn't luck. This wasn't a fluke. It was skill eclipsing brute force, intelligence outpacing repetition. Crawford proved that Canelo's reign was not as untouchable as it seemed, and that when true greatness comes knocking, even kings must bow.
He landed like 129 headshots to Canelo's 76. Certainly landed more jabs. Canelo obviously had landed more body shots because he was looking for the body shots more and more and more. Trying to chop Terence Crawford down didn't work.
Smith's breakdown of the fight described it as a masterclass, supported by the numbers. Crawford landed more headshots, more jabs, while Canelo targeted the body in hopes of wearing him down. But strategy without success is meaningless. Canelo's plan to chop Crawford down failed.
I had the fight 5-4 in favor of Terence Crawford after 9 rounds. It could have gone either way. And then he basically put on a boxing clinic over the last 3 rounds of the fight.
Crawford's plan to outbox, outthink, and neutralize succeeded. The statistics reveal what words alone cannot. Landing nearly double the headshots proves Crawford's accuracy and dominance. Out-jabbing a naturally bigger man proves Crawford's control of distance. Taking body shots without folding proves Crawford's durability.
10, 11, and 12. He used his jab. He kept his distance. He exchanged when necessary, which is something that I was scared to death of him doing, but he wasn't scared at all.
But Crawford stepped in, felt it, and dismissed it. By exposing that myth, Crawford didn't just beat Canelo physically, he beat him psychologically. The intimidation factor is gone, and once the fear is stripped away, what remains is skill versus skill. On that battlefield, Crawford proved himself the clear victor. His statement wasn't arrogance, it was honesty. And that honesty confirmed what the fight had already shown. Crawford is definitely better than Canelo. Terence Bud Crawford's victory over Saul Canelo Alvarez was more than a win. It was a declaration, moving up into enemy territory, defying expectations, and dismantling a champion in his own kingdom. Crawford didn't just survive, he thrived. Stephen A. Smith's commentary, paired with Crawford's own reflections, painted the picture of a man who transcended divisions, myths, and doubts. The verdict is clear. Canelo may have been king at 168, but Crawford walked into his palace and proved himself the better man. And now, the crown of boxing rests firmly on Crawford's head.